Now tell me the impact of what you think design thinking will have on this school too, because I noticed that that's part of what your DNA is in terms of what your idea is.
Well, I think design thinking, it gives us a way to actually assess those skills, because that's the other piece of it. I mean, teachers have always known this, but if you have 35 students in front of you and you give them a lecture or whatever, they're reading a book or something like that, you don't have the opportunity really to know them and really assess, well, can they collaborate? Can they innovate? So I think design thinking gives us a curriculum to really draw those skills out. And we also feel that moving forward, you have to be a designer. I mean, just like with 3D printers, I'm envisioning that someday, if you want a piece of furniture, you'll just go on your computer, design it, hit print, and there's the furniture. Mm-hmm. Like all of those things, processes are being placed at the individual level. So we have more control over our world and our environment than ever. So it's really important that students have a process for designing the right things for the world.
And I think, too, we see design thinking as a problem-solving approach. And so if students get enough practice with it, it becomes internalized. And then, our hope for our students is that they go out into the world and they make a difference and they are part of the change that's happening in our society. And so design thinking is just a way that they can tackle some of those bigger problems that they're going to face when they get into the adult world.
That makes sense. Now, this next question has to do with your experience as educators. Every single idea that you've talked about, in my mind, all no-brainer type stuff, like, oh my God, it's like a checklist. Yes, we should do that. Yes, this makes sense. Now, the question is, why aren't more schools doing this? In other words, I'm assuming that these are some of the frustrations that you've had in your careers as educators, but why can't you do that at the schools that you've been in the past?
That's a great question. And I think, a lot of it is just, there's so many pieces are hardwired into the system that it's difficult to, and we all get so busy and we don't have, especially as, budgets are being cut for professional development stuff. There's so many, we're all so busy just getting through the daily part that it's difficult to step outside and imagine something different. But I think, I think in our case, because the schools where we are, most of the schools are big. They're over 1,000 students, which for us are considered big. I think you need a smaller environment to do it. And it's hard, and we've noticed this too. There are so many other systems outside of schools that we bump into. Like we're trying to figure out what will our transcripts look like, how do we give grades and things like that. And we have to translate so many of the things that we're going to do into the larger environment that becomes an obstacle for the traditional comprehensive school. Is that just the work it does, just internally and externally, I think is an obstacle. And then I don't know. I don't have a great answer because we really have wrestled with that. And I know several times when I talked to some people about a charter school, they would, we're not doing a charter, but they'd always say, well, why don't you just take a regular school and those same practices that make that school successful. And so what we're hoping to do, though, is go to scale by being a graduate school of education. So we'll be able to certify teachers in this. And so they'll be able to we'll get more teachers going into traditional schools that have had this experience. They'll say, oh, wait a sec, maybe why don't we try this a little bit differently? But I think what we're trying to do with technology, it would blow up the whole system. The whole idea of 50-minute periods of something like that is really not an incremental change. And it's really hard for a traditional school that's been around, 50 or 60 years to do anything other than incrementally change. So I think that's one of the big obstacles.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Do you have anything to add to that, Nicole?
I would just say, the tech piece, the hardware and the software, is sort of only now getting to a point where where we can do things like these flexible blended learning arrangements. And I think there actually are a lot of schools that are experimenting with this and trying to wrestle with it. But, definitely the people who are in the space now are the early adopters. So they get to sort of fight through all the hard problems and figure it out. But I think the tech piece is important. I feel like even 5 years ago, we couldn't have done some of these more flexible, data-driven things that we're hoping to do now.